Welcome to Deal Nation. On the show today, we have Max and Ryan from PRYCD. They are land gurus, property investment gurus, and just a great resource for anybody in the real estate investment space. So really happy to have you guys on the show. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to give everybody a little bit of background on yourselves, your history in the real estate investment space, and then of course how you met up and got to the idea, creation, and launch of PRYCD.
Yeah, of course. So again, I'm Max Edson, one of the co-founders of PRYCD, and so really this idea was born probably about 6 to 8 years ago now. Ryan and I actually went to school together, and so we kind of started with just that's where our relationship together, our partnership grew from there. But really, we both played hockey. Unfortunately, we both got injured, and to kind of take the place of that competitiveness for sports, we kind of try to figure out some other way to build that up through other means, and entrepreneurship was that way. And so land wasn't our first, or real estate wasn't our first target. Really, it was more investing related stuff. And just through that process got turned on through other people and kind of found this niche of land investing and what that was. And so from there, it was really, how do I do this? And so we kind of figured out what the manual process was, basically trying to figure out where to find land to target, where to get the records from, how to price that data, and then how to send out letters and have a consolidated list that made sense. And so it was a really difficult thing to do and tedious when you also have another job to work at the same time. And so Ryan and I put our heads together. I kind of have an economics background. He has a computer science background. And we created an application that worked for us, just solely so we could land invest on our own. And so through that process of building it and getting feedback, it actually was something that we turned public and what it's now priced. And so what it allows us to do is basically research where to target, hone in on the list that we want to create, price each record in that list, and then have a consolidated formatted list that we can then send out for mail, text message campaigns, or any other marketing means.
I love that. That theme has come up a couple times on the show, where people created software and tools, not with the idea of selling to a larger audience, but just problem solving for themselves, to create automations for themselves, to add simplicity to the process for themselves, and then looked at the end product and thought, other people could use this. This could be really useful for a wider audience. So I really love that path in. And it's great that you guys have done so much of the work up front. And we were chatting briefly pre-show, and I mentioned that within the launch control user base, thousands of investors nationwide, probably a solid 10% are actively dedicated to land transactions, and the other 90% want to be. So all of those things that you mentioned of really, analyzing markets, knowing what draws attention to a certain parcel, what little add-ons you can do to gain more money out of it. All of these things are outside of the kind of traditional distressed property niche that not our 90% sit in. So it's really invaluable information to be able to quickly source that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's a great point, everything. And while a lot of our stuff focuses on land, we do provide the ability and capabilities to download records for both houses and land with everything. But I'm sure I started with multifamily real estate myself, had a triplex, and it was a very, in-depth process to go through, and you have to do a lot of the work. You got to do a lot of due diligence. And when I found land, it made everything a lot more simple. And it opened up kind of like that blue ocean approach, where there's so many people in housing and real estate and multifamily where land kind of gets forgotten. And so that was one of those great things where, again, we're not dealing with tenants, termites, toilets. We're just dealing with the vacant land as it sits. And so what our platform is great at is, again, researching and finding metrics specifically on land and where to target, what may be the best places, where there's, good levels of competition, but not overly competition, where there's high demand, low inventory. And so you can do a lot of those looks on our page and then download those lists and get really fine tuned onto the properties you want to target. We have just the general different acreage ranges, different owner preferences. And then we also have some really cool insights that you could filter with as well. So like if you wanted property, and this is more land specific, but if you wanted parcels that, have road access, because with land, some of them don't have access, we can filter out properties that don't have road access. We can filter out properties that don't have the topography that you want. Maybe it's way too steep to potentially build on. And so we can do all that for you. And so while we focus and provide a really good construct to basically create a list of leads for land, you can do a lot of different things with that list, whether that's just buy and flip it, invest for the long term, maybe you buy and hold it, or maybe you develop it, whether that's just the build to rent model, or you split up the land and then develop individual lots. So there's different ways you can go with the different data sets that we provide. And with that,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and with that, we also provide a lot of the due diligence tools as well. Because one thing you may ask is, what makes a good parcel? What really devalues it? What makes it valuable? And so we provide a lot of the due diligence on that, so you can compare and contrast and really get a good sense of what the value is.
Awesome. So that due diligence is exactly what I wanted to touch on. So in the distressed property market, I always kind of joke that this was, an entire industry launched by Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? People read the book and they're like, oh, I can get into it. And so there's this understanding somewhat of the, you can wholesale a property, you can wholetail a property, you can fix and flip it, you can add it to your rental portfolio and add up the number of doors that you have. And people kind of understand that, from our user base in particular, understand the different pipelines that you can follow with any given property coming out of the distressed market. But land is an entirely different, evaluation and opportunity process. So I'd love to take a step back, like before anybody even gets to priced, so that they know when they get in what they're looking for. Like when you guys, from your experience, what are some of the pros of land transactions? What are the cons, if at all? And then really kind of, I'd love to dive into what you just mentioned, which are, what are the land pipelines? You flip it, you can develop it, now I know there's a lot of land hacker videos out there. So I'd love to get your kind of insights on pros, cons, and pipelines.
Yeah, and that's a great question as well. So one of the biggest pros is, again, you're not dealing with the tenants, termites, toilets that I mentioned with earlier. You are just dealing with the raw land, right? So there's no structures, there's no anything else that you're dealing with that could cause a lot of headaches down the line. The cons maybe is that that there's no depreciation with it typically. So a lot of people invest in real estate for the depreciation. There's not going to be depreciation here. But with that, usually the returns in land can be more sizable. So, there's different things you can go and talk about. And I guess another pro is that really land investing can be completely virtual. So you're not pigeonholed into your specific zip code that you are, or your location where you're located. Now, I know you can obviously, invest, from different places with real estate and multifamily as well, but this makes it a lot easier to do that. And so just the way the distance that you can kind of cover may be a lot better. So I'd probably say that, if you're summing up the pros and cons, you're not dealing with any of those external factors, just the land. And then you can invest everywhere really simply and effectively. And the returns can be a lot higher too, from a typical, real estate deal as well. And then the cons probably are going to be that depreciation aspect. And then depending how you're looking at it, it may not be the best long-term hold, depending on your investment strategy. So that's probably another con. And now the pipeline, I know you mentioned as well. So with land, there's a few different ways you can go about it. And I'm going to list the ones that I can think of right now. It may not be all of them. But one of them is going to be wholesaling, right? You find the deal and then you just transact it to someone else. That's going to be kind of the simplest approach there. And then another one's going to be your land flip. So you're going to just buy it, whether that's all in cash, just however way you're going to do it. And then you flip it on the open market. And then another way that you can go about it is subdividing the property. So you can buy, let's say, 100-acre tract of land, and then you could split up into 10-acre properties, and you could force appreciation that way. Or you can do the build-to-rent model or further development, right? Or entitlements. So there's many different ways you can go about it. It's really, because it's the starting point for everything, right? Whether you're just wanting to do land or whether you're wanting to do a house, multifamily, commercial, any sort of thing, land is at the starting point of everything that you need to do. And so, if you can get in at the ground level, you're going to give yourself a really good opportunity to do whatever you need to do no matter what. But the big thing is obviously to get to the right price point as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that I know that everyone out there in the industry really sees land as an untapped resource, right? It's kind of what wholesaling was 7 years ago or something, right? And a lot less saturation. But you mentioned returns, and so I'm curious about a risk to return ratio with land, because someone coming into wholesaling is just watch their YouTube videos and done the base level education. A big kind of fear factor is, all right, well, let's say I find a house that's worth 145 and I get the seller down to 130. 15 for my first deal is pretty solid. I'll take it. But if I don't have a buyer in place, ready to go, lined up, I'm looking at I'm holding the bag on 130 grand, right? Or without at least dropping the deal, which you don't want to do, right? So what's the kind of risk to return profile look like with land?
Yeah, and that's another great question. So it probably is a little higher. If you look at it, that risk is maybe a little higher from a standard level from real estate, but at the same time, you can mitigate a lot of the risk by doing the due diligence needed before purchasing any property. So while it may look higher on the surface, I got to tell you, if you buy it right, it can be you can be very confident in what you have, and you have multiple avenues to make it into something that is profitable as well. So that's one of the greatest things about it. And so probably the biggest pain point that we see people, and where a lot of the concerns come from, is price, right? In housing, multifamily, any of those, you can see, or just normal housing, you can see what the estimated value is right on Zillow. Now, whether you think Zillow is right or wrong or whatever it is, but you can still see, you can still see what the value is of that property. If you go and search for a parcel of land on Zillow, they won't show you anything. So where a lot of people run into trouble is with the pricing. And so that is something that we really, it's one of our core competencies, and what we pride ourselves on, is being able to give you a valuation for that parcel so that you're purchasing it right. And so what we've done is basically aggregated comps from all the different listing sources, and we've created our own model. And so we can give you what that estimate is at a very granular level as well. And so that mitigates a lot of the risk right there and gives you an edge over a lot of other people trying to figure that out on their own. And so now that if you use us, and we were able to provide you what the market value is for every single property record in your list when you download data with us, or if, let's say, you wanted to, just send out letters or text message campaigns or anything else, get those deals back, and then figure out what the parcel's worth after the comp report that I was mentioning earlier, that provides you a detailed analysis of everything that you would need to know about the property. So just public property, information. We give you what our suggested market price for that parcel is. And not only do we do that, but we also provide you a list of comps down below that's showing you, what those list prices are, or what the sold prices were. And then we also give you a lot of really cool information as how far that parcel was from the one you're looking at, what the price per acre is when it sold or when it was listed, and a lot of really good information, along with, topography insights, road access insights. So you can start to put together all this information and then get a really good sense of what this property is worth. And then to further that, you could always contact the local realtor in the area. And so you're really just trying to figure out and get multiple pinpoints at the same time, right? So you're going to come up with your analysis, what we thought the price was, and then you can get a third party's opinion too. And then now you kind of triangulate all those and you can get a really good sense of what that property is worth. And so that mitigates so much risk. And a lot of the time we're buying for less than it's worth. And so we know what that value is, and then we can buy for less than what it's worth. Just because the owner, there could be so many factors that the owner is trying to, get rid of, whether that's they're going through a divorce, maybe it got inherited down and they don't want the property anymore, they have medical bills, anything could be happening where they want to just sell that property. So what we can get it for less than what it's worth, it just opens up way more opportunities than if you're buying at market value, which you can still do stuff, right? So like if you're doing a normal wholesale deal, you're going to want to buy it for less than what it's worth for just a little bit, right? Whether it's just a 5-10% margin. But if you're flipping that land, you want to get it for a lot less typically. And so it is not out of the ordinary to see you pick up, a parcel of land 35 to 50% of what it's actually worth if you're trying to acquire it off market, and then you could flip it and sell it on the market from there. So there's so many different things you can do. And even if you were to purchase it, let's say at what we believe the market price is, that's when you can do those subdivisions that we talked about earlier, where you can split it up, force appreciation that way by basically lowering the acreage per parcel, which then typically brings up that price per acre per parcel. So that's a way to do it. And then another thing like the build to rent model, if you wanted to just hold that land, build your house on it, it's a great way to potentially get the land value less than what it's worth, and go from there. So it just provides you so many different options, but our goal is to provide you with the information to then make that decision.
And if you're able to put any permanent structure on a piece of land, the value of that land goes through the roof, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on the area and the type of structure you're putting on there. But that's another conversation. We don't really go in depth about if you put this structure, this is what could it be worth.
No, of course.
But if you have, if you have information on that or an understanding, or if you're in the real estate sector, right? And you're typically a housing investor and you can buy the land and then what everything else is worth from there, you've just lowered, one of the costs of the overall product. And so if you can get that lower, then your returns on the monthly basis or anything else are going to be increased. So if you have, if you have information and understanding of real estate, houses, multifamily, commercial, and you build something on it, then you're going to set yourself up really well.
Yeah, and one of the things that we really preach at Launch Control is to use the application, use text engagement to find out exactly who's buying in your market, and more specifically, what they're buying in the next 60 to 90 days, so that you're able to just source easily properties that you can easily turn over, right? They fit the buy box of your buyers list. So I'm curious about buyer profiles, because when you talk about a parcel of land and there's all these things that you could do, right? Like you could add a driveway, and then that could increase the resale value of it. You could parcel it off and potentially sell it as different lots. With these different pipelines, I'm assuming that there's often different buyer profiles on the other end. So who are the buyers in land?
And there's so many different profiles you can think of, and there's two different kind of approaches you can take with it. One is just get very specific, right? And focus in on one specific profile. So whether that's, maybe you want to do entitlements, you want to basically take a parcel of land, do all the entitlement work, so then it's ready to be built for a larger multifamily, builder to come in to take it over. You're going to want to talk to those people beforehand and get an idea, an understanding of what their criteria exactly is. And then you can go through our platform and then search for that land that meets that criteria. So that's one approach, right? And that it doesn't have to be just builders. It could be anyone else in particular. Or you can kind of just do general marketing to the overall public, whether it's just someone that wants to just, get out a little bit in this like suburbs or just in more rural area to get off the grid for a little bit. They're wanting to build their, their dream home or house or a vacation area or anything else, right? So there's two different approaches you can take with it. The one thing that's going to stay in common is the demand for the area, right? So our research page provides you with tons of different metrics that you can look at, basically sold to for sale ratios. So you can see how many parcels of land specifically have sold versus how many are listed, to get an understanding of, again, how much is actually, demand in that area. Or you have what we call our parcels on market ratio, where we can show you how many parcels are currently listed on the market versus how many, parcels of land there are overall in that area. So you can get an idea of the saturation levels, how many properties are currently listed as a percentage of everything overall. And we have a whole bunch of different metrics specific to land like that. So like we have our days on market data, population growth. And so you can go through that and basically select the filters that you want, and then come up with a list of counties or areas to then target. And then from there, you can go and hone in onto the different acreage sizes, and then owner profiles. Like maybe one that can be pretty common is targeting owners that have a property in a certain county but live out of that county. And you can do the same thing for out of state owners as well. People say, nothing has been truly back tested to tell you what is better than not. But you can kind of infer certain times that the further they are away from a property, the less kind of attachment they have to it. So there's certain things like that you can do. And so it really just depends on the area and what you're looking for. But those are just certain examples that you can use to hone into a certain profile of people to target.
Yeah, I think it's such a appealing transition for anybody that's in the distressed property market, because it's all just different shades of the same thing. Right. It's all some kind of distress factor, certain touch points that you can call on to create a connection with the seller, certain things that you can use as leverage with the buyers. But it all is really just it's a different way of phrasing, but it's the same basic process for buying and turning over available transactions. One of the things that I find really interesting about what you guys do, and ways that we can kind of find connection points between launch control and priced, is to me, it seems like a perfect way to build a fully built out funnel if you combine the two platforms. Because if someone comes in, if I come in fresh and I know nothing about the land in a particular market, but let's say that I wanted to get involved in properties in Northern California, kind of up in the foothills in the mountains, and I know nothing about it. Well, I could use price to figure out everything that I need to know in terms of market analysis. I could figure out, what type of land is selling, the likelihood of being able to sell it. So I could create a whole success profile for myself and market profile for myself from priced, and then use launch control as end caps in that funnel, and reach out to buyers in the area, create early connections, let them know that I'm going to be funneling them available properties in the area as they come through. And then on the front end of the funnel, use launch control to reach out to the actual sellers with the knowledge that I've gained from priced in my back pocket, so I can have a very educated conversation with the sellers and know if that deal is going to fit within margins that are going to work for my buyers. So you end up with a complete lead conversion funnel with just linking the two systems together.
Absolutely. And it really is a seamless process. So our finished product is going to be a CSV file of just a list of property record and owners that you've basically targeted through our website. What's great about it, though, is, again, I know you guys have skip tracing too, but if you wanted to use our system too, you can get that lead list with skip trace data already, and then upload it to your platform. You send out the text messages like you mentioned. And then as you start getting leads back, that's when you can use our property report to kind of hone in and analyze each individual property as it comes through. There's two kind of different methods, at least for land investing, where you have basically what's called blind offers, or not that, essentially. And so essentially what it is where you're putting the price or the offer price that you're going to send out in the offer initially. So if you're sending a text message, you say, hey, I want to buy your property for X price. Or you can go with a different approach where it's just more of a, hey, I want to buy your property, and then communicate afterwards. So it really depends on what you're looking for. But our property reports can help you out with both of those, analyze afterwards to kind of tell what, if that's still a good price, or if you need to change it, or again, what the price that you need to offer afterwards too is.
Yeah, and there are ways that you can. I know that direct mail and handwritten letters and things like that are quite impactful in the land space. And I know that a lot of times people do actually put an upfront offer, which in wholesaling a property is kind of a no-no, right? Yeah, you're not going to go in with that, right? But in land, you can do it. And what can be quite effective is, instead of texting an offer on land, because if you get that coming through, it's an unknown number, right? And somebody's like, hey man, I'll buy your backyard, I'll give you 20 grand for it. You're gonna be like, what? How'd you get my number? Is going to be like the most likely response that you get, or who is this, right? But if you say in the text, I mailed out an offer. I figured that was the easiest way to contact you. You should get it in the next couple of days. The number's on there. I just wanted to let you know you could also message me here if that's easier, right? And all you're doing is just being very conversational and setting expectations of, hey, I'm going to send you an offer. Don't say what the number is, right? It's on the offer sheet. Just say plant the seed that this thing is coming, and let them know that if they want to chat about it afterwards, they can just send you a text, right? So then you're not waiting for them to call and being put into the situation where that person calls, and whoever the acquisitions lead is has to scramble to look for who the person is, and to find out who they're talking to, make sure that they know exactly what the piece of property is. In this case, the person writes back and goes, yeah, sure, I'll text you. Or they send a text back and say, 20K, really? But right? Because you can look in Launch Control and see what the property profile is based off of the data that you got from Priced, and you can start a pre-educated conversation. So it's really about using the two systems in conjunction, but also your marketing plans in conjunction.
Sorry, Max. The other thing I was going to mention is one of the other cool things we see happen is you can construct like a range offer, right? So you could say, I would be willing to offer from X% to X%. And one of the features we actually have for that is that we sort of create this incremental range for you from what we feel is the market value all the way down to 0%. And then if you're doing this through templates or some kind, you can just basically specify, hey, I want a template, an offer range from 40% to 80% of what I feel like, or what I've been given as the market value, and then use that as your baseline for, instead of giving you a specific number, you say, we feel like we could probably give you something in this range, and then, start your negotiation from that. And that's one of the things we actually provide for you.
Yeah, I love that. We had just our previous guest on Deal Nation was Steve Rawlings, and he focuses on using storytelling tactics in the sales process. And one of the things that he talks about is, he gave an example of, he used to work for a big news organization, and they'd go to people's houses and say, this is your chance to tell your side of the story. And that softening technique of, he called it making people the hero of their own story, is really powerful. So when you come in with this just a straight take it or leave it number, right? I'll give you 20K. Well, now they have to make a yes or no choice. And there's a much higher likelihood that they're going to say no. But if you say, here's a range, and I just want to initiate a conversation about this, now they feel like they're more in the driver's seat, right? And they're going to probably try to drive towards the higher price, obviously, but you have them feeling like they have choice in the matter, and that they can kind of steer the direction of the conversation, makes them the hero of their own story, and gives you probably a lot more likelihood of a true engagement with that seller.
Yeah. And what's great about having a text message campaign is that you're instantly, you're talking to them. You're not sending a letter where you have to wait 3 days each time or anything, right? You're immediately talking with them. And with the property report you can pull with us, now you immediately have the information to make decisions as well, right? You don't have to say, hey, let me get back to you in a few days to figure everything out. You can pull a report, and within, 10, 20 minutes, if you want to really analyze it, you have a really good sense of what everything's at. And so you can close the deal quicker.
Cool. So Max, speed of play is really important, and being able to kind of cut through all of the white noise. We get that a lot throughout our user base, of even with the speed of texting being fast and being able to get that real-time response, you still have to stand out within that space, right? And I know that the competition is lower in land than it is in the property market, but you still have there's still a good chance that landowner is getting pinged by other people. All right, so how do you stand out? How do you use the combination of a handwritten letter and text to stand out? How do you use what you're saying in text to stand out? And a lot of times it comes down to taking the time to get educated, right? To use what's available and priced, to really understand the market, to understand seller profiles, to understand what you can have in your back pocket to use. And it's often comes down to, let's say that there's just a small little tidbit about the land that's a question you could ask. Like, for instance, from what I'm seeing, it looks like you could potentially add a driveway up on the northeast corner. Do you think that would work? Get them to respond in text, right? And if it is enough to get them to respond, then that simple question may have been the thing that really made you stand out from the competition.
Yeah, no, and that's totally true. It's just because there's always going to be people mailing or text messaging or anything else, just because I guess it kind of goes into one of those things where the pro is that you can send letters and target land all over the United States. The con is everyone else may be doing the same thing now. So like you mentioned, you have to stand out, and it starts with connecting with them. How do you get them to talk back? That's the first thing, right? Like what do you provide them to get them to talk back to you, whether it's even telling you to, get lost or anything else. You just want them to kind of open with something. And then from there, how do you make them then start to feel a connection with you? How do you just keep talking to get to something that's reasonable, right? And once that open, then that comes down to you too, of figuring out beforehand all the different opportunities there are with the land, right? So like usually you want to try to start with the most, and then as they kind of dwindle down, you can kind of come up with your, the last use cases. So like one example is, let's say flipping land or wholesaling land, right? You need to get it for undervalue. So what we would do is start with our offers, obviously under what we think it's worth, to provide us with enough profit margin to make sense. So we're going to start there. If they take it, awesome, let's run with it. If they don't, though, where the problems come is people may just have one thought minds and then just say, okay, I'm done, and go on to the next one. And there's nothing wrong if that's your only business model and you want to kind of hone into that, that's fine too. But to get as many different leads and acquisitions as possible, you want to kind of increase your, the tools in your tool case. And so if you can't wholesale it, you can't flip it, what other options do you have? And maybe you can't buy it at lower than market value, right? Maybe you have to go up or creep closer to market value. And then what can you do then, right? So in that option, you can subdivide it still. So do you know how to subdivide it? If you have that ability, then you could still buy it at that price, and it still gives you a good opportunity, to make a good return. And then so on and so forth, right? Maybe you can't get it at market value. Maybe you have to buy it a little higher than market price. But what they're thinking the market value is a different land use type or use for the land than what you're thinking, right? Maybe it's currently just, recreational, or maybe it's just residential and you're trying to turn it into commercial. Now you possibly can get it over what it's worth if it's such a good, property that you want to buy it, and you could still make it work by, doing the entitlement process. So it kind of, it's both ends, right? You want to make sure you're coming up with connection to get them to talk, but then on your end, you want to make sure that you're aware of everything that can be done with the property and what you're comfortable doing with the property to give yourself the best opportunity to also work and find that price that makes sense for both parties. And so it comes from both sides there. And that's where you can truly, excel in this space. If you have more tools in your toolkit and be able to offer all those opportunities, now you're just throwing the rest of the competition aside, right? Because if you're competing with people that only can flip land or only wholesale, now you don't have to compete at that same thing as them, right? They're going to drop off where you can get it for something else. So that's really how you can separate yourself moving forward. And as you can start to get more expertise in this, you don't have to start there, but it could be a good place to end there, especially if you already have understanding of the housing side and you're coming over into land.
Yeah, well, it sounds like much like on the housing side, diversification is really the key to being able to scale up. If you want to really build a big, thriving business, you have to be able to diversify. But you said a couple in a couple cases like subdividing the land, right? I think you used the expression "if you know how to," and a lot of people just don't know how to. So is there an active JV kind of market in land as well, where you could pair up with someone else in kind of the land space that can help you with that sort of deal? You're gonna cut down on your profit a little bit, but you're also going to learn. So is there a market for that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many people in the land community that are willing to partner up and help and work with deals together. It's truly an amazing community, and it's a tight-knit community. And so if you find, whether it's a Facebook group or anything else, if you put out a good deal, they will let you know and they'll want to partner with us. And so I recommend, if you don't know what you're doing, partner with someone to learn what you're doing, because that can be pretty painful if you make the wrong steps. And subdividing, there's so many. Subdividing is a general term for what you can actually do with the land too. There, you can do minor parcel splits where you're just really just truly splitting it up and not doing anything else, or you can do the full subdivision process and really get nitty gritty, put in roads and curbs and gutters and all that. So it's a very fluid spectrum of what you can do in subdividing. And so you can do very simple ones to make it easier, very complex ones, and just however far you want to take it along is up to you and what your knowledge base is and what makes sense.
Yeah. That's it's such an interesting learning process. And I do love that about the real estate investment in general, the willingness to help and the willingness to work on deals together. It's, I think of that in like a corporate kind of setting, and it would just never fly, but it's in the investment space, it's really entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs. So despite all the competition, there's also a lot of support, which is nice.
Well, and what I'll also say to that is, if you don't want to partner on a deal, there's still so many people that if you don't have the cash for the deal, let's say you want to do just a simple flip of a parcel of land. Let's say it's worth 50,000, you get under contract for 30,000, you buy it, and you want to sell it again for 50,000. If you post that property on these communities, there's so many people, if it's a good property, they'll let you know, and they'll offer, whether it's an equity split of it or debt related, whatever you want to do as far as the partnership there. I mean, there's so many people willing to help from just standpoint of if you don't have the cash to purchase the property as well. Yeah,
that's, again, just the resources that are available by a little bit of kind of community building and networking are incredible. We see it a lot at Launch Control, and it's actually something that we're really trying to put some weight behind, is just enabling more and more of our community to really reach out to each other to problem solve in exactly that kind of way, because it's not 6 degrees of separation, it's usually 1 degree, right? So speaking of community, I'd love to hear just a couple of quick success stories from people that are working with Priced and just kind of their not just their success with Priced, but just your entry into their business and what they're doing, so people get an idea of who's working with you.
Yeah, and we'd always love to get more feedback on the full cycle, just because we provide them the lists and then they go off and purchase the properties and sell them without us truly knowing. But we do get occasionally people to reach back out to us to let us know how awesome their process has been. there's a few different ways that we truly help these folks out. And one of them is just the time it takes to build your list. It can be a very manual, mundane process to build a list and to get the amount of records that you want in your list to initially send out via text message, mail, or anything else. And so again, you have to figure out where you want to target. You have to download, or you have to search and basically pull the records and fine tune where you want to get it. Make sure your list is big enough. You have to reformat your list usually. You have to scrub it. You have to do all these different filtering tactics that we can do automatically for you to make sure that when you get the list from us, it has all that information in it. We provide you with the list that's already priced. It has every single market value and offer price in there that you want to use. It's already formatted, cleaned up. And so you're just supposed to, like, from our goal is so you get it from us and then send it over to Launch Control or Mail House, anywhere else that you want to, market your data. So we help them. That usually could take people a couple weeks to do. Now it takes them, 10, 20 minutes to do. So it's just a time savior on that standpoint. So now they're focusing on the acquisitions and deals instead of the actual data gathering. And the pricing is huge too. It's so hard sometimes to figure out what the price of a property is for land. And it's probably the biggest deterrent for people in this space, that we're able to do this for them automatically. And again, you have control if you do know, and you can put your own prices in there too. But the ability to automatically do that is just super huge and a time savior as well. And then they can just focus on, their deals and everything. And because they're freed up, now they have time to work on other tools that they have in their toolkit. So we get people that reach back out to us that save them so much time that now they're able to send out, 2 times, 3 times, 5 times the amount of volume that they were before. And now they're getting more deal flow back and just exponentially increasing their business on the back end. The due diligence piece. Sometimes they have to hire out people and it takes, a couple of days to get the due diligence back. With our property report, you can pull it. You have all the information at the tip of your fingers immediately. And so we have people that reach out, prior VAs, and they say that they were fortunately let go because of us, but they at the same time would say how amazing our product was. So it'd be kind of a funny thing. And then they go and do the land on their own. So, it's not a sad story or anything, but it just helps them not only get the deal flow, but also be able to handle that deal flow in a manner that allows them to sell further and get the information they need, because there's so many different bottlenecks, right? Getting the data. And then once you get the leads, those are kind of like the big bottlenecks, is sending out the letters or text messages and, getting access to those leads and closing them. And so if you're able to speed up those two processes, you have a well-oiled machine. And it's just, if you have a good system in place, you can continuously grow that and keep doing it, because our system was built for speed for that reason.
Yeah, I think at their heart, both of our platforms are about shrinking down the investment process to conversations and solutions. So if someone can take a priced list, put it into Launch Control, have our done for you team at Launch Leads do all of the text messaging, so that all that they're doing is taking calls from sellers who are ready to discuss their land, and then getting on those calls, and again using all of the market research that they've gotten through Priced, and coming in pre-educated on that call, not having to do tons and hours of prep and education work for that. Then it really does it shrinks it down to conversations and solutions, and conversations and solutions is where all the money is, right? So it really is like I said, using the two systems together creates a complete funnel, and a complete funnel that is really truncates the process so that you can focus on those core activities.
And not only that, but it also helps with the scaling of that funnel, right? So, like Max was mentioning, we've heard those success stories of individuals cutting down their time. And then on the flip side of that, we have, folks that have downloaded 250,000 owners within a couple of hours in like the state of Florida. with all the pricing done, all the skip tracing done, in a matter of minutes. And now they're off, running their campaign the same day against those property owners. And if they have the infrastructure in place in that funnel, they're going to be extremely successful, but without spending, hours or days, collating those lists and, doing all the necessary prerequisite work to get that campaign off the ground, which, without some of these products is, like say price or launch control is just not going to be possible, or it's going to be extremely tedious.
Yeah, and it's one of my hopes from with this show for Deal Nation is that people are able to get this level of education before they dive in. Because unfortunately, what happens a lot, I think, is people do put in way too much work trying to figure out all of the market information, and they text maybe a little bit too soon, and they're not fully equipped with all the information that they need. So instead of it being, well, I found launch control, and then after I found launch control, I found priced, or vice versa, if you're able to come into a situation where you can actually pre-assemble the funnel, then you're absolutely right, Ryan. Then scalability becomes much, much easier, because from the beginning of your operation, you have a scalable system. So guys, we've gone over a lot today, but it's been really focused pretty heavily on land. And I know you guys have a very diverse offering at Price. So before I let you go, is there anything else about the platform that you guys wanted to bring up?
The only thing I wanted to kind of end with is that although we cater to land, we have so many different tools available for whether you're a house investor or a land investor. You can download property data nationwide with us for all sorts of properties. And so we just want to make sure everyone's aware that, again, we provide a great service for no matter what types of lists that you're trying to create. But at the end of the day, our tool is an all-in-one acquisition tool that will allow you to research, pull data, price data, do due diligence all in one process, so that when they put it to launch control, send out text, you have everything you need to make decisions.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add is that we're extremely involved in the feedback cycle with our customers, and so if you're coming to our platform and you say, hey, it's pretty good or it's great, but it would be really nice if it could do X, Y, Z, send that to us. Let us know. Most of our customers will tell you that we are pretty good about turning around feedback and implementing it back onto our system, because our goal is to make you the most successful investor possible. And if you have a feature or an idea that you think would benefit your process, I guarantee you other people will benefit from that as well. And we're going to want to add that to our offering as soon as possible.
No, that's great, and I think it's really helpful, because it's such a dynamic market. And you're right. I say the same thing at launch control all the time. Like if it's a one investor need or a one investor want, it's a many, right? So you're as willing as to work with people. That's fantastic. So how should people get in touch with you if they want to connect?
So first of all, our website is price.com. That's PRYCD.com. That's where you can visit our website and check it out. We offer a 14-day free trial period on all of our plans. But the best way to reach out to us, you can either go through our site and the support submission, or you can reach out to us directly at support@price.com. That's going to be the best way to reach out to us. And we'll answer any questions you have and help you through the process.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and for everyone listening, we'll of course put all of the links in the episode description below, including a link to join us at Launch Control if you want to put together, pre-assemble that funnel that we've been talking about, and really use Launch Control and Price together to scale up your business. All right, well, thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate the time, and thanks for coming on. We'll have to have you back on soon.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks again.
Thanks.